Hello and welcome to the Spandex and Wine podcast. I'm your host, Robin Hackney, and I'm so happy that you're here. This podcast is a place for conversations about balancing a healthy lifestyle and being happy. More specifically, happy hour. Together, we'll explore all things wellness and wine. I hope you learn a little, laugh a lot, and along the way, know you're not alone on this balanced wellness journey. Ready to jump in? Pour something in your glass that makes you happy because it's time for Spandex and Wine. Hello and welcome to the Spandex and Wine podcast. I'm your host, Robin Hackney. So it's January and I'm wondering if you are participating in dry January or at least dry-ish. It's a popular habit to give up after the new year. And I myself am doing a dry-ish version because alcohol was becoming my way of self-care, or at least I labeled it as such. I asked today's guest to come on the show to share her story. I feel it's important and a bit of a social responsibility on my part to include stories of sobriety in this podcast. Kendall is a friend of mine that found herself spiraling downward because of her unhealthy habits. I hope you find this episode interesting and informative. I give you Kendall Goff. Well, hello and welcome to the Spandex and Wine podcast, Kendall. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thanks so much for asking me to be on, Robin.
Well, I appreciate it. I know that I want to dive into probably one of the hardest and most courageous things that you've done, but let's first start with your fitness. You started at a very young age. If you wouldn't mind, just share everything that you have done, because I know it's amazing.
So it's funny, when I think back about my fitness journey, my mom was a runner when we were little kids. And so we would follow her on our bikes when she would run. Then I was involved in gymnastics from the time that I was single digits. And I did that through high school and was a coach for little kids and was a cheerleader. But health has always been kind of, even in years where, like in college and stuff, like I still prioritized, we would work. So some of us in the house would work out and stuff. And then into early adulthood, ran a lot more, always went to the gym and things like that. But then as the kids came, just always prioritize being outside. And so even if I wasn't getting formal workouts in anymore, we spent a good majority of time on bikes and hiking and walking and just, being physical in that way. And then enter my 40s and got a little bit more formal with classes. And that's how I met you. Mm-hmm. And so integrated some yoga, kind of injured my hip. And so it wasn't able to run like I wanted to, but still have definitely tried to prioritize fitness and working out and being healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. It shows you look amazing.
Thanks.
And I'm sure that it also helped having 3 boys, probably running around with them. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. Well, you know what that's like.
Yes.
Like just keeping up with kids. So I think that sometimes moms discount that not being a workout just because we're not necessarily logging those hours. But I definitely think that has to, I think, prompted my kids to try to choose healthy things and being physical and stuff as they're getting older.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I notice it now because I watch my grandson on Mondays and Fridays. Uh-huh. Oh my gosh, the amount of squats and just like lifting him up. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, I think I would have rather gone to the gym to get my workout. I mean, don't take away the time with him, but
Exactly.
Yeah. So being a gymnast, I mean, that's like a part-time job at an early age. So I've always noticed that you are such a dedicated, disciplined person. Do you think that it comes from there or is it from your mom as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's multiple sources. She was definitely always one to encourage being healthy. And I think watching her, and she was kind of, she was very strict when it came to our diet, which I can't say I've adopted all those habits in my own motherhood, but I definitely realized that I think it set just kind of the framework for making some healthier choices. Not that I have not, gone through periods of time, like I said, during college and things where I was probably not eating as well, but overall, I think just working in veggies and things like that when we were kids, prompted me to be a little bit more diligent, and definitely from a discipline standpoint, not going too far off the track before I'm like, wait a minute, I'm just feeling crummy. And part of that always, relates back to our physical health, I think.
Well, did you ever have a time with your health and fitness that you did go way too far and you're like, okay, wait a second. And when I say way too far, like fall off the wagon too far, and then you had to just really pull yourself back and it was difficult for you?
Definitely. I would say, and I know we're going to get into a little bit of this, but I would say late 30s into turning 40. I think obviously just having a milestone birthday, it was one of those things where I did kind of recognize that other things had taken priority, and I wasn't loving how I was physically looking, but I also wasn't feeling great from an emotional standpoint, from a physical standpoint. And so it was a little bit, it took, I think, a more concerted effort and a lot more focus to be like, okay, this is something that I need to take on. And yet, just like anything, it's like, once you kind of get back on the horse and you're like, okay. And I'm one that likes that instant gratification. And so, you start to, your clothes start to not be quite so snug, and that's always helpful. But then too, I think when we start to get, for me, I've learned to just kind of, instead of be looking outside of myself for fulfillment and compliments and things like that, just to internally, I'm a big calendar and to-do person. And so just being able to check off the days that I would work out was really motivating to me to see the progress that I was making, and not just from a physical standpoint, but I think just showing up for myself felt good.
Yeah. No, and I think it's important too, especially if you're a visual person, to have some type of chart in a visible spot, whether it be for your health and fitness or just any kind of goals, whether it be professional, personal, it doesn't even matter. Have that in front of you. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. I agree.
And I know in your business, you probably, you go, okay, so you work for, I'll let you share. Tell us what you do.
Sure. And it's probably shifted since the last time that I saw you a little bit. So
okay.
My background is actually interior design. Did that for about 10 years, had my kids, started the family, and I just kind of fell into that, all things motherhood, and then started a skincare business, which was not anything that I knew about. And yet it was something for myself. And so Rodan and Fields had entered my world, and quickly that took off. And it was nice because I could juggle that alongside the boys and stuff. And definitely learned how to be more consistent during that time. And I think that did kind of spill over into workouts and other things, but definitely the consistency piece was something that I have always struggled with, as far as having that goal and staying super focused. And I guess I shouldn't say I've always struggled, but I can easily get distracted. And so it was nice to have a goal that, again, just like the workouts, it's like when things start positively happening, then you're like, okay, I'm more determined to do that. Plus, I wanted the kids to see that I wasn't just their mom, that I could do things in addition to taking care of them. And so I've done that for 12 years. And then recently, here within the last year, I've come back to interior design. And so I'm working for a contractor, and I don't even realize, I did not realize how much I had missed doing design. So it's been fun to help people beautify their spaces again, and kind of revisit that passion of mine. It definitely was it was lost for a while.
Wow. Okay. That is so cool. I've always seen you as a very creative person. So I bet you are fantastic at that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute.
Okay.
But okay. So this is airing in January. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is because I know that, like I said in the beginning, you've had to do one of probably the most courageous and hardest things that you've done.
Absolutely.
And, a lot of people do dry January or dry-ish. And so I thought that this would be a great time for us to have this conversation, because I know that I have caught myself treating wine as self-care.
Yep. So
if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about the steps that you've taken and where you are. Sure,
absolutely. So it's funny. I sometimes when I jump on Zooms, I'll start to say, I'm Kendall and I'm an alcoholic, because we do some of our meetings on Zoom, but that is my truth. I from an early age enjoyed drinking, did it underage, like some of us do, especially being from a small town, like there was not a whole lot else to do.
Yep.
And so it always, alcohol always played kind of a major component in my life. From a social standpoint, Fortunately, when during my pregnancies, it took the back seat, which I'm very grateful for. And also when my kids were really young. But what I realized just over 4 years ago was um, alcohol had definitely started to jade my reality. And I was still going to work out, and I was still, for the most part, showing up as what I felt like was a good mom. But that started to spiral pretty quickly once my youngest got to be about 3 or 4. And so, you know, like good Americans do, I got on Amazon and ordered all these different wellness books. And so I have many of them that was, just I think it was just to try to kind of get my drinking back to where I thought it was appropriate. Mm-hmm. And, I think in this society, in the culture that is kind of brewing right now, alcohol is definitely, like you just said, it's positioned as self-care, and that can be the case. So, I think that that's something that oftentimes when people find out that I'm not drinking anymore, it's like, oh my gosh. And I assure you, you're not looking at anyone that can drink in a negative way. And so, for a long time, I think I qualified myself as just a really social drinker, and I didn't necessarily recognize the chaos that it was starting to really cultivate in my life. And it definitely was causing issues in my marriage. And it was getting to where, I was not necessarily being completely honest with the kids when it came to if practices those are canceled. And I would always make sure that I was the driver to carpools and never the pickup person. And, again, it's like our social lives kind of revolve around alcohol. And that included, for me, that was family time. For me, that was also with neighbors and friends. And I think as I started to order those books, I would read a couple of chapters, and it hit too close to home. I didn't want to hear it yet. And so I sat in that place of recognizing, I should probably slow down. But instead, I kind of adopted more healthy lifestyle, as far as, like I said, late 30s, early 40s, where because I was still showing up for my workouts, I was like, can't be that bad.
Yeah.
And I think back now and I'm like, I don't know how I got through some of your classes. I would just be feeling green inside, but I could justify out. It's not that serious because I would still go and work out. And finally, like I said, just over 4 years ago, I finally admitted to one of my closest friends, I don't think I can do this anymore. I feel like I might have a really not a good relationship with alcohol. I feel like it's taking over. And she almost kind of she did breathe a sigh of relief. And she was like, yeah, there's a couple of us that have been talking about that. I'm like, what?
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I was really kind of stunned. And yet I think in my heart of hearts, I too knew that there was a problem. Mm-hmm. And so went to an alcohol assessment. When you find yourself Googling like issues with alcohol.
Yeah.
Let that scare you. That's the biggest thing that I can say. Like, I was terrified. I'm like, gosh, who am I going to be friends with? And what is my social life? It's going to all come crashing down. I had to recognize that there was nothing wrong with asking for help. And that's what I did. I landed in a alcohol assessment, and I talked with a counselor, and he's like, yeah, come in and do this. I wasn't ready to stop. But before I left the office, he encouraged me to put this meeting finder app on my phone. And it sat there for months untouched. I was just appeasing him as I walked out of it. And then things kept unfolding in a negative way, and more fighting was occurring, and the kids were getting upset in the evenings. And I crossed the line of my own. I was actually like you on a Zoom call, but I was with 50 of my business partners, and I led this call, and I was not sober. And I got into a fight with my husband at the time, and promptly marched upstairs with my refilled glass of wine and passed out. And I woke up the next morning, and I realized something had to change. Yeah. And I found a meeting from this meeting finder, and I showed up there and admitted I was struggling with alcohol, and I was just fully embraced. And I jumped into that program of wellness, and man, it has just been a game changer. Mm-hmm. I am always, as you know, I'm always part of my program, and part of being able to stay true to myself and accountable is being open and honest. And so every year on my annual anniversary, I put out there, please reach out to me. And it has been astonishing, the people that have from, and that's, I guess, the beauty of social media, right? It's like all these different facets of your life.
Yeah.
From growing up, from high school, from college, people that have reached out and said, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I've struggled myself, or I had a family member that struggled with alcohol. And right now I think it's kind of like, it's gotten kind of sexy to be sober, right? There's a big push for stars coming out and admitting that they're sober, and they're, the mocktails everywhere. I don't care what it takes, because normalizing that sobriety is okay, to me, is part of the reason that I am really transparent about it, because I think there's a lot of me's out there. And so that for me has really been a turning point in showing up for myself, being able to show up for my kids like I did when they were really little, just reestablishing a different open and honest relationship with them, but also just honoring, I think, who I was really meant to be, and I had just gotten so far from that, so far.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine the very beginning. It does have this certain stigma to it, and how did you get over that?
It was not easy, because my ego can be very large. And like I said, there was a lot of fear that I held into just what life was going to look like, because alcohol just had become ingrained in almost every facet of what I did. And I think, coming to a group where I felt supported, that I didn't feel alone. And I have wonderful, wonderful friends and family. They don't care if I'm drinking or not. They want me to be happy. They want me to be healthy.
Yeah.
And that has absolutely nothing to do with if I'm drinking or not. I had tried to do the dry January. I had tried to kind of put these rules in place for myself. Like, I'm only going to drink on the weekends, or I'm only going to do this.
Right.
I found myself unable to stick to that for too long by myself. I also realized that I had to tell the people that I was around that I wasn't drinking. And it was interesting, because in this community, it's like, if you mention you're not drinking, people are like, oh my gosh, are you pregnant again?
Yeah.
Turns out you can just not be drinking, but not be pregnant. But it really, I think it took me getting over myself and recognizing the chaos that was, had really built up around me, to say, I have to step away from this, and really recognize that alcohol was the culprit for a good amount of that chaos, at least where it was seeding from.
Right. And you had mentioned some fighting. I can only imagine that several relationships probably changed and maybe lost some. They gained new ones, obviously, it sounds like, but
yes. It was interesting, because I was always that fear of missing out person. And so I got sober in November, and 4 years ago, and then COVID struck that March. And so suddenly the world shuts down, and it actually, while some people, I think, kind of went into this place of sweet alcohol is filling in all these gaps. For me, it provided this place of sort of sanctuary to be able to say, gosh, I'm not missing out on anything, because nobody can do anything.
Yeah.
And while at home, that was tricky, because the boys' dad was still drinking. I recognize now, I cannot imagine how chaotic that time would have been had we both been drinking. And so I'm really grateful. Again, like, the world kind of stopped, even though our, everybody's family life is still having to continue, but I'm glad that mine could continue without alcohol being part of it, because it really, again, the relationship that I've been able to rebuild with my boys has been significant. And I know that would not have been possible had I not recognized how serious my issue with alcohol was.
And tell me how you have changed as a person. I mean, I can see, like, you have this glow. You've always had a glow, but I mean, your skin looks great. You look amazing. So how have you changed?
Well, I appreciate that. It does helpful. It is helpful when you're in the skincare business for a decade, but I think more than anything, it's that, it's that finding myself again. It's that getting back to that happy person before alcohol was in play, especially at the end of my drinking. It was in play every single day. And it takes its physical toll. But more than that, I think it just kind of starts to it chips away at your soul. And oftentimes, something doesn't feel right, but you don't want to necessarily admit that could be the culprit. And so we kind of just are for me, I was internally battling with myself all the time. And it just makes for, a struggle, on so many levels. And so for me, what's changed is, my ability to be completely honest. And that starts with myself and not having to make excuses anymore for why I had to maybe lie about practice getting canceled, but instead just show up, for the people that are around me, and actual, just like a genuine okayness with me, instead of what I found myself doing, especially, really kind of throughout, my adulthood was, being able to, alcohol made me feel more comfortable. And so I was able to, wear these different masks for people, and that all got to fall away. And I just, like you said, I definitely, certain friends I don't have in the same way anymore. And I realized that's okay. I don't have to have all the friends, and I would still do something for them if they needed me. But as far as where I spend my time, my bubble's gotten a whole lot smaller, and I'm absolutely fine with that. And so, the kids now, they're 11 and 15 and almost 17. And just to be able to really spend my time with the people that I want to, time is going so ultra fast.
Yes.
And it's just, so that part of it, just really being able to be genuinely content with myself. And I don't know that I don't know that I ever felt that. I really don't, since childhood.
Sure. And I can't imagine how freeing it would be to just be able to be your true, authentic self.
Yes. Which
That's
is,
wonderful.
for me, it's goofy and nerdy. And I have, during sobriety, I ended an almost 20-year marriage we were just not supportive partners anymore. And to find a man that, can really be in true partnership with me, I mean, that has definitely brought joy, but also not, realizing I can realize that just by myself, I'm okay too. And I don't think I realized that a lot of my identity was tied to being, feeling like I needed to be an important wife and a mom. And while I still love the title of mom, I would never trade that. It doesn't have to be my only identity. And so that in itself, I think, has just, made me feel, a different level of contentment. And as they're approaching, like getting ready to leave here and what that looks like, knowing that I'm going to be present for them is just awesome.
Well, speaking of being present, your oldest son was in an accident recently. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine, but I'm so glad that you are where you are now and it wasn't 4 years ago.
Oh, it's funny. I just shared in our group, we share on our birthdays, if we choose. And that was part of it this year. I mean, had it been 4 years ago, me getting a call after dinner on a Monday night wouldn't have necessarily presented an ability to show up in the trauma bay at Children's Mercy, sober. And so to be able to, luckily Gage is okay, but to be able to, again, just be there for him and have tough conversations about consequences and, how quickly things could change. And I think that's the part, that really has been so impactful, is looking back at old bad decision making and times that I did make the decision to drink and drive. And I hope that, especially holiday season or not, that people recognize there's so many different ways to get around now,
Right.
Because sadly, people don't always choose that. I didn't always choose that. And so to be able, like I tell my kids all the time now that 2 of the 3 of them are driving, I will come and pick you up or your friends up anytime, no questions asked, any time of the day, because just, I think Gage's accident was a reiteration of just how quickly things can change.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm so happy that he's okay. I was watching your post. I'm like, I can't even imagine. Oh, that would be an awful, awful feeling. So I'm so glad he's good. So I can guarantee that there is at least one woman out there listening to this, and she's like, So yeah, I've done those Google searches. I've thought, wait a second, I still get up, I still go to work, I still do everything that I'm supposed to do. What would you say to that person?
Um, I would, gosh, that just gives me shivers when you when you talk about that, because I was that lady. I was functioning really high functioning in alcoholism.
Hmm.
I was doing all the things. I would say, I think you were going to post how to get a hold of me. Please don't hesitate to reach out. There are more people than you know that would love to have a conversation with you. And I have
Hmm.
people reach out on the regular, and sometimes it's a one conversation and done. That's okay. I have people that have started to explore sobriety in a different way. And there's plenty of people that just have a relationship with alcohol that just needs some tweaking. And that I think it's recognizing it's okay. And people don't think about us nearly as much as we think about us. They don't care if you're drinking or not.
Yeah.
I, I think that was the thing where you're just like, oh wait, they don't care if I have I should send you a picture of my outside fridge, because I have every non-alcoholic beverage that you can possibly imagine. And so, again, now it's like there's a culture of fun mocktails and things, but even just with that, nobody cared.
Yeah.
Literally no one cared. And especially as long as I'm not interfering with their drinking, of which I don't do, they
Yeah.
don't mind. It does not matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. And so I think just as as I have gotten older, it's been helpful to realize, like, I don't have to tackle the world by myself. There are so
Yeah.
many amazing women, and even the community that you're putting together here and that you have. Lean in on those people, open up. I was terrified to admit what needed to be admitted about myself, because I thought it was going to be viewed as weakness or that I was broken. None of the things could be further from the truth. And
Yeah.
like I said, there are people out there that have embraced sobriety like myself, and it's such a freeing way to live versus what I had created for myself. Even though it looked all pretty, had the car, had
Hmm.
the house, had the dog, had all the things, but
Yeah.
I was miserable. And you don't have to live like that. That's what I would definitely share. There is a different way.
Yeah. And I mean, it couldn't have been easy. And I'm sure it
Huh?
gets easier and easier. But to that person that's like, okay, it would just be too hard. I can't, I'm not strong enough.
Yep. It's been amazing to me, because I was that lady too. I mean, I remember having a very distinct discussion with the boys' dad, and yelling at him, I will never ever stop drinking. I just did not think it was possible. In our program, we talk about one day at a time. And
Hmm.
sometimes when things get hard, and when you get a call about your kid being in an accident, that you're like, oh my gosh. But what I recognize now is alcohol would not fix that. It would not change my circumstances, whether happy or sad, because I could drink over anything, positive things, negative things.
Hmm.
Uh, it is possible. Life continues to go on, whether I'm drinking, whether I'm not drinking. What happens for me in sobriety is that I get to experience it. So much of my drinking a lot of times was running away from big feelings, and I don't have to do that anymore. And it turns out
Hmm.
I can be scared for my kid and also be sitting there present with him and help him recover. And that is just, it's very different than the life that I had told myself that I had to have alcohol to live.
Oh, sure. Oh, goodness. Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation, and I so appreciate you coming on and being your true, authentic self and sharing everything with us. Is there anything else that you would want people to know?
Um, I think more than anything, that you're not alone in this. I think that's the way that I felt like I was going to be up against the world. That, again, most of the people that I had surrounded myself with, when I really think about it, they didn't drink like I did. They were social drinkers, like real social drinkers, where you can
Hmm.
have one glass of wine and then be done. And not to be fearful of addressing that, because
Yeah.
um, it really um, it really is such an easier way, but I had convinced myself otherwise. So, like I said, you're going to post my contact information. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, whether it's one text that you send me and I respond, and you're not ready to send anything back. Keep my number in your phone. Because that's what it took for me. It took for that counselor just planting that little tiny seed,
Yeah.
and getting to the place where I was ready to actually be honest with myself.
Yeah. Okay. And then if they needed to take it a step further, like where would they go? What would someone do?
So I would say, there's lots of different avenues. The Meeting Finder app on any platform you can find it. It's a little chair and it has a circle around it. You can search for meetings anywhere that you're located. Anywhere. Actually, we've even gone to other countries. It's been fun to go to meetings in other countries. Because turns out there's alcoholics everywhere, literally everywhere. But I'm always met with open arms and so I think it's finding a community in there. I use Alcoholics Anonymous, but there's a lot of different ways there's different communities out there, especially now on Instagram. You can search just, sober, and you will find a million different hits in different groups and different pages and people you can follow. And if that's where you feel like starting out, there's a great group here in Kansas City. It's called Sip Steady. And, they do events around town. And again, it's all based on non-alcoholic camaraderie. And so we've done it. We ran into them at Boulevardia, and there is a community that exists out here that I just didn't even realize exists. But, you can do social media searches, but even to take it a step beyond that is connecting with live humans. Yeah. For me was really critical. And so, that was really the place that, for me, the rubber hit the road. And it wasn't just me, reading through these books and seeing myself in them, but not being willing to really have someone to walk me through what it was going to take.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Oh gosh. And I will post all of that in the show notes so everybody can have that. But Kendall, thank you so much for sharing your time. I truly appreciate it.
This was great. I really appreciate you having me on, and to everybody out there, hope you had a great holiday, and cheers to 2024, which is crazy in itself.
Yes. There you go. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
You too. Wow. A huge thank you to Kendall for coming on, being raw and real, and having that conversation for all of us. Here are a few takeaways. 1, moms, give yourself some grace. Running around with and after your kiddos is hard work. Give yourself permission to count it as physical activity and fit formal workouts in when you can. Any movement is a good thing. 2, posting goals where they are visible daily can help keep you focused. Tracking sheets can also be extremely helpful. A place to mark off healthy habits week to week to track your progress is great to stay the course, whether they be used for personal or professional habits you are wanting to create and maintain. If you'd like a free tracking sheet, I'm happy to send one your way. You can email info@spandexandwine.com or text TRACK to 913-392-2877. 3, we joke about wine being a mode of self-care, but when it truly comes to that point, it might be time to look at your habits to determine if alcohol is beginning to jade your reality. 4, if you have tried on your own to cut back on alcohol and or quit without success, or this episode hit a little too close to home, reach out for help. Check the show notes for all of the information and places that you can go for help. 5, skip happy hour and instead plan time with friends that involves physical activity. Pickleball, cornhole, more on cornhole in another episode, bowling, a dance class, or yoga. Fun does not have to be all around alcohol. 6, normalizing sobriety will allow you to become more transparent, and therefore give you space to become your authentic self. 7, life isn't over when you cut out alcohol. It's actually a new beginning, finding yourself again and refinding happiness. 8, you can be a high-functioning person and an alcoholic at the same time. Kendall is happy to be your first step to have a discussion. Her info is in the show notes. Begin your freedom today and know you're not alone. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, or if you know someone that could benefit from it, please forward it on to them and share it with them. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoy this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you take a few seconds to do each or all of the following. First, follow or subscribe to Spandex and Wine. It'll help you so you don't miss an episode, and it'll help me because you won't miss any episodes. To do this, you'll just go to the podcast, click subscribe or follow wherever you are listening. Look for the plus sign or follow button, and this is one of the best things that you can do for the podcast, so thank you. If you'd also be willing to give a 5-star review, that would be amazing. And lastly, please share an episode with a friend or 5 to keep the love going. I appreciate you. Thanks.